So this is just a quick behind the scenes as to what we do to actually prepare these episodes ready for your viewing. Every week, for every episode, we have to go through with, in this case we had about half an hour's worth of footage, and trim it down into something that's a kind of a sizable episode, because the last thing you want is to hear all the little rambly bits where we just sort of talk about our favourite tricks and and lots of different bits where we can't even remember what questions we were going to ask. Lots of things that aren't that interesting, and there are a lot of things that we started asking at every single shop, which the answers were all the same. So unless we got one which was really, really different, we just left it out. We then have to go through audio processing, where we output the entire audio, and we have to then go over it, sentence by sentence, making sure that it's amplified to an audible level. Because we didn't have any audio recording equipment actually on hand when we did the tour, because we weren't really expecting to do anything, all we had was the audio that came off the camera phone, which, bizarrely, a lot of the conversations that we had, you can even tell the difference when they're performing a trick than when we're just having a chat, because they don't project when they're just having a chat. When someone's performing, they do their big stage voice, but when they're just talking to me and Becky, quite a lot of the time they got this almost kind of hushed conspiratorial tone, as if they were giving us the darkest secrets of the magic world. And what that meant was that we have bits of audio which are very nearly flatline when you look at the graph, and we have to expand those out into something which is audible, which of course amplifies the noise as well, and we have to do some noise conditioning to try and get that out. So the fact that you can hear anything at all on these videos really is something of a miracle. Just to give an example, I recorded this. Becky's kind of leaning back a bit there, and I'm speaking straight at the camera, projecting as best I can in this kind of room without getting a lot of echoes. You're probably hearing a lot of room noise along with it. The other microphone that I have running is the one that we do the voiceovers on, just over here. So if I switch over to the voiceover camera, voiceover microphone, you can hear that the voiceover on the microphone is a lot clearer than the voiceover that you're getting on the actual camera itself. So when you have two people sat opposite each other and they're talking to each other back and forth, what you're hearing is kind of the side noise of the conversation that's going back and forth. So I'm not even projecting towards the camera. Whereas if I face a microphone and speak directly into it, obviously we get a much clearer sound. We didn't take any microphones with us when we did the tour, so what you get is this, rather than this. It's actually a pretty good situation here because I was quite close to the camera, but you can hear the difference, and the difference gets worse when you're 4 feet away. So finally, after equaling everything out, and when you look at the graph, you can even tell the difference between the bits which are the music and the voiceover, and the bit that we recorded in store and had to amplify out. Because when you look at the peaks on the waveform, it's very choppy, very, very kind of like a comb almost. And that's because all those are the little bits where quite often you would have a long, quiet sentence punctuated by a single loud word. And it's very difficult to cut around that one loud word, or it's because they've said a T, and that's of course created a big spike on the graph. It's all stuff we have to deal with. When it's finally output, we have to then sort of export that sound out, copy it over the timeline, and then mute out all the actual sounds from the video clips, so that what you're hearing is just the edited sound, none of the original audio. And we have to do this every single week. I was saying to Becky, just before we did this video, I was saying to Becky just a moment ago, because she's normally not in here when I do this, and she's been listening to me doing episode 5, and about halfway through the audio editing of episode 5, she just said, "Good God, this guy's tedious. He doesn't half go on." But it's not because he is any more tedious than any of the other shopkeepers. It's simply because if you have to listen to each sentence individually 3 or 4 times in a row, because you've listened to the whole thing, you're like, okay, these are the bits that are really quiet, and then you get one sentence and you have to play that sentence back to make sure that you're not accidentally amplifying halfway through a word, so the volume will suddenly change midway through a word. You have to cut it into the individual sort of separate bits of sound. Then you amplify them. Then you listen back to make sure you've not accidentally caught any clicks or things like that in there. And then you have to listen to it in terms of that compared to the next bit of audio to make sure that the sound doesn't change too much dynamically across it. And so you're listening to each sentence on its own about 5 times, which for a quarter of an hour episode means that I spend an hour and a quarter listening to the same stuff being said. And it's a goddamn nightmare.